Welcome to the first video recorded episode of Kalam Podcast. I'm so excited to finally bring this podcast to the recorded format, to the video format. And I'm even more excited to introduce the first guest of the video version of Kalam Podcast, the Gazan poet and writer, Mosab Abu Toha, and someone that I'm proud to call a friend now that I've met you in person. Welcome to Kalam Podcast video version.
Thank you so much, Edgar, for this wonderful work and for hosting me. And I'm glad to be the first person to be in conversation with you.
Sharaf Kabir. It's a pleasure to have you here. And let's get right into it. I know you have a lot on your schedule. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned in the few days that we've seen each other that your daughter is named Yafa. Why did you name your daughter Yafa?
Well, it's a beautiful name, first of all. The second thing is that Yafa is the city from which my grandparents were expelled from in 1948. And it's a city that I cannot visit because of the Israeli occupation and the Israeli policies. So I thought that by naming my daughter after this city, I could be with this city all the time. I can at least see the name of this city on my Palestinian ID card. It's all the time there. And it's also honoring the city to which my grandparents wished they could return.
Throughout the process of doing this podcast and sort of rereading the history of Palestine, I find that Yafa is such a, it's a city, it was a real place physically, but it also lives as a kind of symbol in the imagination of Palestinians. What does Yafa, both like literally, but also kind of theoretically, what does it mean to you?
So Yafa was and is still known as the Bride of the Sea. It's one of the most important cities in terms of its seaport, in terms of its cinemas, in terms of its oranges that it used to export to the outside world. So I'm talking about Yafa as the city from which my four grandparents, my grandparents on both sides were expelled from, and to which they were rejected from returning to. So literally, it's the forbidden city, and theatrically, it's the city which witnessed the beauty of the Palestinian life, the vibrancy of the Palestinian people, the sea, the oranges, the cinemas, and a lot of artists from the Arab world established their fame in Yafa. So anyone who would call themselves, an artist or a singer, they would visit Yafa in order to establish their fame there.
Kulthum.
Yeah, Kulthum, and I think Abdul Halim Hafiz and Muhammad Abdul Wahab. So Yafa had been a great city for the Palestinians, but unfortunately after the Palestinian Nakba, which drove about 800,000 Palestinians away from their cities and villages, it became another country. It was made another country. The cities were given different names. So by naming at least my daughter Yafa, I would keep this name. Its spelling, the way it's pronounced, I would keep it at least to myself and the people around me who would call my daughter Yafa. And even the English-speaking people, they would call her Yafa instead of Jafa or Yafo.
I think you mentioned one of the sort of nicknames of Yafa, the Bride of the Sea. Another nickname is al-Gharib, which is the mother of strangers, which is kind of an ode or an homage to the city, how it was very hospitable to strangers.
Yeah.
Pre-1948, and isn't it ironic now that it's very much not that, because it's under the Israeli rule and people can't return, people that are come from the city, not even strangers,
There was a neighborhood in Yafa, I think it's still called this. It's called Jabaliyat Yafa. Mm-hmm. So there are people who are called, they are from Jabaliyat Yafa, or they are Jabaliyat Yafa. Jabaliya means two things. It could be the people who migrated from Jabalia, which is part of Gaza, to Yafa during a starvation in Gaza city. So they moved. Yeah, a long time ago. So they inhabited an area in Yafa and they were called Jabaliyat Yafa.
Okay.
Or it could refer to a mountain, because Jabaliya means mountain-like. So an area in Yafa which looked like a mountain where people resided for a long time. So these people were called Jabaliyat Yafa. But in general, there is this story that many people from Gaza, because there was a starvation, there was no crops, so they migrated to Yafa and settled there. And it's the mother of the stranger, because it had big industry there. It had big opportunities for people to work from Gaza, from maybe Nazareth, from Jerusalem. So it was a really vibrant city at the time.
Yeah, people from all over the world, I guess, as well, all over the Arab world. I remember yesterday, or I think maybe the day before, you were describing your kidnapping, and I won't ask you to talk about all of that, but again, it struck me, and you kind of smiled when you said this, because of the kind of how surreal that situation was when you came back. And I think the first person from your immediate family you saw was Yafa, your daughter.
Yeah.
And she said, "Mom was looking for you."
I still laugh at that. I mean, the simplicity of her thinking that my wife was looking for me, as if I went missing for a few days, and the mother was looking for her husband. So I mean, Yafa, as a city, as a daughter, was waiting for me to return to it. And Yafa was the first city, or the first child of mine, to find me and stumble into me. So maybe my city would stumble into me instead of me returning to it, which I hope, one day I will find myself in Yafa, living where my grandparents used to live, and sleep under the trees, if they are still there, sleep under the same trees where they used to sit and have their coffee or their tea.
Yeah. If you were able to return, if things dramatically changed politically in Palestine and Israel, was Yafa the place you would want to return to?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's Yafa is my first origins. I mean, it's true that I was born in Gaza and all my memories are in Gaza, but I long to the place where my grandfather, who I have never seen in my life except from photos. I don't have videos of him. I only have 2 or 3 photos when he was old and when he was on a wheelchair before he died. So these are the only photos I have of him. I don't have any memory with him, living with him. That's why I wrote at least 2 poems about my grandfather, and there are, I think, 2 or more poems in my forthcoming poetry collection about my grandfather. So that's the city where I will start looking for my grandfather that I did not see. I will try to smell, and taste the earth and see where my grandfather used to walk, where he used to have his coffee, or where he used to smoke. I don't know if he used to smoke, but I mean, I will try to find out when I'm there.
Yeah, I hope that you get there, and you inshallah, and that you find traces of your grandfather. Another thing that I was struck by when you were speaking the other day was that when you were handcuffed during your kidnapping, you had such pain in your arms that you wished that you were armless.
Yeah.
How does one get to that point?
So when I was kidnapped, it was, I think, 11 in the morning on Sunday, November 19th. And after the Israelis confirmed that it was me who they wanted, although later, 3 days later, they would say, "We are sorry about the mistake," But I mean, when they confirmed it was me, they forced me to get naked in front of 3 soldiers, along with another Palestinian kidnapped fellow, before handcuffing and blindfolding us. So I stayed handcuffed and blindfolded. Especially, I stayed handcuffed for about at least 8 hours with both my arms to my back. And I felt so much pain that I wished I did not have any arms. I thought that there was someone who was tying my shoulders very, very tight and trying to cut my arms from the shoulders. So it was so painful. I still remember this. And I can imagine how much painful it would be for other Palestinian people who were kidnapped after me and who stayed, handcuffed for not 8 hours, but let's say 24 hours, with their hands, tied to their backs. What would it mean to them? And I know that so many other people who were handcuffed and blindfolded were shot later.
Yeah, this has been proven. And obviously your experience by any measure is torture. But I also understand the need for you to also, shed light on people who are still in that situation. I've noticed that strawberries are a theme in your writing and in kind of as a symbolism for you, and that you speak about picking strawberries. What does strawberries mean to you?
Strawberries are a symbol of survival, because in May 2021, when Israel attacked Gaza for at least 11 days, I returned to the strawberry fields in Beit Lahia in North Gaza, and I found that the strawberries never stopped to grow.
Despite the bombs?
Yeah, despite the bombing, despite farmers not going there, to water the plants and take care of them. So strawberries for me started to become a symbol of survival, a symbol of resilience. And I started to use it on social media as a replacement for the word Gaza, because Gaza, Palestine, some words are being censored by Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or X. So I started to use strawberry sometimes as, a replacement for the word Gaza. So my post won't get less reach.
Yeah, in a similar kind of way to how people use the watermelon for Palestine.
Exactly.
I've heard you speak previously about picking strawberries with a friend of yours who's now murdered, Rifat al-Arir, the poet who was murdered by the Israelis during this war on Gaza. What did he mean to you, and what was your relationship like?
So I came to know Rifat as a university professor at the Islamic University of Gaza. When I was in my second year, he was supposed to teach us literary criticism, but he was traveling to Malaysia to continue his PhD studies. And then when he returned to the university to resume his work there, I didn't get the chance to study with him. But in my fourth year, I sent him on Facebook Messenger, I wouldn't call it a poem, but it was something like a poem. So I sent him this, and his response was very positive. He said, this is exciting, this is very good. I think if you continue writing and if you read more and more, you will have excellent poems.
Was this a poem in English or Arabic?
In English.
Okay.
So that was in 2015, I think, or 2014. Okay. I was still, about to graduate. Yeah. So he encouraged me to write more in order to improve my writing. And he encouraged me also to read more. So he didn't say, this is good, okay, that's it. No, he told me, if I read more, if I write more, it means that I will produce better work.
Yeah.
And this is what I did. And later, Rifat knew that I wanted to learn how to write and I wanted to learn from other experienced writers. Mm-hmm. And that's when he introduced me to We Are Not Numbers, which is a project that he co-founded, I think in 2015, and which still exists to this day, and from which many, many young writers from Gaza, the West Bank, and other surrounding refugee camps and Arab cities learn from how to write feature stories, how to write poems, how to write short stories.
What does poetry mean in the Arab culture, in the Arabic language, in the Arabic culture?
So in the Arabic language, poetry is, it's called the Diwan al-Arab. It means the volume of the Arabic culture. So if you want to learn about the Arabic culture, you go to the poetry that was written in a certain era. So if you wanted to learn about the pre-Islamic poets culture, you would go and read what these poets have written, like Antara, like Amru al-Qais, like Al-Asha, like Amr ibn Kulthum. You wanted to learn how these people were thinking, the morals they had, some thoughts about about existence, their love for animals, their love for the nature around them. If you want to learn about the culture, you go to poetry. If you want to check what a certain word means, you go to the poems, to the early poems. For example, and if you open maybe some of the Arabic dictionaries, it will tell you that this word means this. And then they cite a line from the Arabic poetry to as a proof that this is the meaning of the word.
As a source.
Yeah, as a source. Another thing, the Arabic poetry is used as a resource for Arabic grammar rules. Mm-hmm. So if, let's say, the subject is used in this way, or the object is used in this way, or this preposition is used this way, they would provide you with a line from the Arabic poetry from the past. So it's something like a storage. It's something like the memory of the language, whether its culture or its structure and the meaning of the words. This is what the Arabic poetry means to us. It is something to return to contemplate what our ancestors, not ancestors because they are Arab, I mean because they lived a few hundred years ago, Yeah. So we want to learn how they lived, what they thought of their lives, their morals, their love, their hatred, their revenge, I mean, I like so much some of the poems about the dignity that the Arab had, and we still have a lot of dignity. I mean, sometimes he would say, I want to live with some animals because when I have a fight with other people, they would come to my rescue. For example, I don't know how to translate this, but Ash-Shanfara, one of the most famous poets, he said to his community, وليدونكم أهلون سيد عملس وأرقط زهلول وعرفاء جيئل هم الأهل لا مستودع السر ذائع لديهم ولا الجانب ما جر يخذل. He's telling his people that I have other friends than you. He named some kind of foxes and wolves. These animals, when he tell them secrets, they don't go out and tell and share it with other people. So even animals around the Arab poet, are part of his community because these animals have some morals that maybe other people around lack.
So the reason that Arabic poetry can be sources for grammar and history and these kind of like almost academic subjects, is that because poets have always had a position of authority in Arab society?
I mean, I wouldn't say that poets used to have a position in authorities, but
a respected position. Yeah,
respect. I mean, in the past, the Arabs would celebrate, the birth of a poet. They had something like a festival when a poet is discovered. They have a festival, and there was even, by the way, something like similar to today's poetry contests. Mm-hmm. There was Souq Uqad. Okay. Souq Uqad. I think it was in. I think the name of the city is Uqad, and it still has the same name in Saudi Arabia. Okay. So they had this season where poets come from different cities from Saudi Arabia, from Yemen, and there are some judges. So the poets would come and read their poems in front of the most established poets. Yeah. And then these poets will tell them, okay, your poem is good, but it lacks this and that. Yeah. Or your poem is better than his. And there is a story about one of the poets who converted into Islam at the time. One of the judges said, okay, it was a woman, she is more powerful as a poet than you. And he said, you and her are the worst poets. So there are some, funny stories that we read today about the Arabs in the past. They valued poetry. They had some contests. They have some judges. I mean, that was, 1,400 years ago at least. Yeah. So the Arabic poetry, its culture, the stories about it is very, very rich.
A lot of people are really inspired by you. Obviously, you are a poet and people read your poetry and get inspired. What inspires you?
I think what inspires me are sometimes scenes of beauty and scenes of destruction. And something special about both of these things are the details, the minute details that I, as a poet, can see. For example, in one scene, after the bombing of a house in Beit Lahia, that was in 2021, there was a destroyed building, but there was a bathtub stuck between the ceiling and the floor. And that inspired me to write something about the ceiling being a shower of rain. Because it's a big one. It's not drops of rain. No, it was, a shower of rain. Yeah. So I imagined, that the sky, which is the ceiling, it rained on the bathtub. It was enough to fill the bathtub. The plants around me, the sea, the beach, the clouds, For example, my children sometimes inspire me to write something. One poem I wrote, which is going to be published in my forthcoming poetry book, is called "My Son Throws a Blanket on His Sister." And the story is about my daughter getting scared with each bomb she hears. And she said, "Oh, bomb, I have a video still. Oh, Daddy, a bomb." I asked her, "Are you scared?" She said, "Yes." And then my son, who is 1 year older than her, he grabbed a blanket and he threw it on his sister. And he said, "Now you can hide." So he wanted to hide his sister under the blanket. Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, nothing can, hide us from the death that comes with each bomb that is dropped by Israel. So these things inspire me to write about them. Yeah. There are some pictures that inspire me. For example, that one picture about which showed a young man who was shot in the street, and some cats maybe eating from the flesh because the body was left for a few days in the open. And there is another photo of a dad with his daughter, each one carrying a backpack on their backs, and they were killed in the street. So I linked these two photos, and I wrote a poem called "The Moon," about a cat trying to eat the flesh, because there is starvation still in North Gaza and in South Gaza now, with the closure of the Rafah border crossing for about 2 weeks. So even animals get starved. So these animals were looking for food, and they found these people. So these photos inspire me to write. It's not that I'm inspired in a positive way, but I mean, these things that I need to document through my words are things that I have to be inspired by.
Do you think it's a way for you to also process some of the traumatizing images that you and things in reality that you've seen?
I mean, it's one way for me to process and to try to get rid of some of the horrific feelings I have after what I saw, after what I experienced. But at the same time, it's my duty as a poet, to transfer, and transmit the messages and the scenes that I see. I mean, I can't wait till the end of this genocide, to start to share with the whole world what I'm seeing and how I'm feeling. But I need to write about these things at the same moment that I see and feel. I never stopped writing about what I see, how I feel, what my children tell me, what my wife says, what my neighbors see, what my parents experienced when I left Gaza. So these are things that I need to do in order to make the whole world aware of what's happening in Gaza, because there is no international media that is reporting from Gaza.
So you and your wife and your children are here in Cairo, but almost all of the rest of your family are still in Gaza, right?
So up until 3 weeks ago, all my family was still in Gaza. But just 3 weeks ago, my mother and my sick sister were able to leave Gaza for treatment. But still, my father, 4 siblings of mine with their children, the whole of my wife's family and their children are still there. My uncles, my aunts, everyone, I mean, except for my mother and my sick sister, are still in the north or the south.
And your mother and your sister, are they in Egypt now?
No, they were able to go to Qatar because they had some funding there to get treatment in a hospital.
How has life been in Cairo since you came here? Do you feel welcomed in Cairo? How are sort of the Egyptians treating you?
I think there is hunger here for the Palestinian stories. I mean, everyone wants to hear, everyone wants to learn, everyone wants to see even some of the photos and videos that I took. People are interested to hear more from people rather than about the people. Yeah. And I saw that a lot. There is a huge support for the Palestinian cause in Egypt. And there are lots of cultured people here who are invested in the Palestinian cause, who write about Gaza, about Palestine, who organize things, who are doing their work in order to stop or change what's happening to the Palestinians, especially now in the Gaza Strip.
Your latest book,
Forest of Noise. Forest of Noise.
This is in English?
Yeah.
And then you have also recently released a collection of poems in Arabic.
Yeah.
تستريح
تستريح الأرض من كلامنا.
The land
takes rest from our speech.
Takes rest from our speech. Unfortunately, we don't have any of those new books here, but we have things you may find hidden in My Ear, your first collection of poems that came out in 2022, I think, right?
Yeah.
How is it releasing books of poetry these days when everything is going on in Gaza?
I think it's difficult, to celebrate and be happy about publishing something about something that's still ongoing. This is one thing. Another thing is that you can celebrate something in Gaza. I mean, I wish that I have held my book signing of my Arabic poetry book in Gaza with my parents, with my friends, with my students, with readers of poetry and literature in general in Gaza. But as far as now, the only poetry signing were done in Egypt. I did one today, and in the United States. I haven't organized any book signings or even poetry reading in Gaza. I was planning to do something. I printed about maybe 150 copies of this book. I took the permission from the publisher to print a local copy in order to launch the book in Gaza. Mm-hmm. And I had about 150 copies. But unfortunately, the genocide started after October 7th, and all the books are still under the rubble of the house after it was bombed on October 29th. So, I mean, I'm glad that more people want to read. There are 3 publishers in the UK who are very eager to publish my book. And we had a publisher in the US, Knopf, who is going to publish the book in October 29th. There is also the French translation of this book and the Spanish translation, and there is a Portuguese translation and a Bosnian and a Greek translation of the books. So there is also hunger in the West to learn more and more about Palestinians from Palestinians, not about Palestinians from others, with all respect to the writings that have been done about Palestine and Palestinians. So I'm really glad that I have this going on, but at the same time, I wish that it was under different circumstances. Yeah,
of course. I really hope that you will have the opportunity to do a book signing in Gaza in the near future.
My hope, yeah. And so, maybe we'll have you and your podcast visit us in Gaza and do an interview, hopefully in
I would love that.
Peaceful circumstance.
And then in Yafa as well.
Yeah, inshallah. God willing.
Mosab Abu Toha, thank you so much for sitting with us today in the video version of Kalam Podcast. It's been an honor and a pleasure to meet you face to face finally.
So wonderful to be part of this. Thank you, Edgar.
Thanks. تمام.
كيف؟
حبيبي.
تحياتي لك. شكرا.